sexually and everything. But there was a time where it was Christmas Eve morning, I can remember it, and or it was Christmas night. And in the middle of the night, he kicked in my door and proceeded in hitting and kicking and all those things. And my son, my oldest son, he's now 23, he was 3 or 4 years old at the time, and he knew to pick up the phone and call 911. That was a blessing. But anyway, the whole point of that, in all that, I had a friend in the program at that time, and in the middle of that, I had to get up in the morning, and I had these little presents that I did not buy because I couldn't afford it, and I had went to a resource outside, those places that help single moms get presents or whatever, and I had all these little presents under my tree, my little bitty tree that I had, and I had to that morning get all my presents and bag them up and go to my mom's, and it was just a really tough time in my life. And I had a friend from NA come over, and she handed me that, Streams in the Desert, and I took that everywhere with me from then on, and it's always been an important part of my life, so I still read it today. But anyway, one of the devotions I woke up with this morning was Jesus Calling, and if y'all don't mind, I would like to read it real quick because I'm going through some things right now, not bad or anything like that, I'm just making some life choices and decisions that are going to directly affect the rest of my life, so who's best to go to when you're making decisions? Jesus. So, I woke up and I read this, and this is what I read. Jesus Calling, May 10th. Do not resist or run from the difficulties in your life. These problems are not random mistakes. They are hand-tailored blessings designed for your benefit and growth. Embrace all the circumstances that I allow in your life, trusting me to bring good out of them. View problems as opportunities to rely more fully on me. When you start to feel stressed, let those feelings alert you to your need for me. Thus, your needs become doorways to deep dependence on me and increasing intimacy between us. Although self-sufficiency is a claim... Can I get a water or something, somebody, please? I'm sorry. I'm getting a little dry mouth up here. When you start to feel stressed, let those feelings alert you to your need for me. Thus, your needs become doorways to deep dependence on me and increasing intimacy between us. Although self-sufficiency is acclaimed in the world, reliance on me produces abundant living in my kingdom. Thank me for the difficulties in your life, since they provide protection from the adultery of self-reliance. Thank you so much for this wonderful man of God right here. And then it goes on to a couple verses real quick. It says, John 15:5, I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him, he bears much fruit, for apart from me you can do nothing. So I was reading that this morning, and like I said, this is all going to fall.
They get drink.
Huh?
They get drink.
Thank you. Let me just get this out of the way. Okay. Let me get it together, guys. So like I said, I'm making some life decisions in my life that are going to affect my life the rest of my life, so I want to make sure that they're, the right decisions, and I'm making them in Christ and not on myself. But when I read that this morning and it talked about the self-reliance, I've always relied on somebody in my life. I'm not talking about God, I'm talking about people. I've always, since I've been a little girl, from the time as a little girl, I relied on my mom, and then it went straight from there into a man, and then it went straight from there to drugs and alcohol, then to treatment centers, and then the psych wards, and then back to men, and back to mom, and back to sister, and back to brother, and back to... I've never went through this life taking care of myself financially, so to speak, or and those things. I've always been a taker. Took, and whatever, that I could get to take care of myself. And when I read that, I wasn't confused about it today like I used to be. I thought self-sufficiency was don't rely on yourself to take care of yourself financially, because then you're not relying on God. That was a lie straight from the pit of hell. Today I knew that in my heart. God's teaching me in so many ways through my finances and through difficulties like that, as long as I'm taking care of myself without taking the easy way out or taking from somebody else to take care of myself, and being a good steward of his money, he's teaching me to trust and rely on him even more, and not to fear that I will be provided for, because source, and I will be provided for. So that really spoke to my heart this morning. But anyway, I also, I was talking to somebody right before this, somebody very near and dear that I love, and she said she couldn't be here tonight, Lori, that the house that we live, it's her house. Very beautiful lady of God. And, you know, I was talking to her about the speaking, and she said, you know what, Kim? She said, whenever I hear someone speak, I don't really hear them talk about the steps too much. I said, you know what, you're right. You know, I mean, we are talking about what God does for us, but God did give us a design for living to get there faster. And I said, that's so true, and because those steps, the program of recovery, I call it program of action. I go to AA, Celebrate Recovery, the 12 steps a year, same thing. Those are my guide, because without a guide, I don't know if, like you guys, I get a little lost. I'm like a deer in the headlights. I need some structure, I need God, I need it set out before me to show me how to do this thing, because quite frankly, I don't know how to do it. I'm learning, and I'm a lot better than I used to be. But so I thought that maybe I would bring that to the table tonight. But real quick, before I start that, I'm going to give you a rundown, not of my war story. We all come in here not on a winning streak. You know, if life was easy and we didn't have these bondages, and we didn't, you know, live in the destruction that the enemy, you know, took us, we would never come to God. You know, that's our way to come to our Creator, and that's where my Creator. I met my Creator face to face. I didn't meet my Creator sitting in a church pew, going to church. In fact, I remember being a little girl and going to church and being very turned off by Christianity. I remember it so clearly, and it drove me away in a lot of ways. In that, hang on, Holy Spirit, remind me. Look at your face, Chris. Before I start on the steps and what they've done for my life, I'm going to do a real quick rundown of where I came from, where I'm at now, and how it's happening. So, I know that when I go hear a speaker and they start talking and they're like, when I was 5 years old and da-da-da-da-da, I'm just like, so I'm not going to go all about that. What I'm going to tell you is that I don't remember nothing before I was 12 years old. Something life-changing that was not good and drastically affected my life for the rest of my life had happened. And from that time on, my life changed forever. I have my daughter sitting here. She said, Mom, you can say my name. There you go, at the end of the bus. I have my daughter sitting here, Aaliyah, and I imagined her when she was 10 years old, because that's when I walked out of her life. She was a 10-year-old little girl. She was a baby. She was a baby. And I walked out of her life, and I can just see when I was 10 years old and what had happened to me. I can only imagine if that would have happened to her, and then her life would have went the same direction as mine. So that's kind of how I looked at that. But in that, I picked up my first drinking drug. It was right around 11, 12, somewhere around there. It's foggy. I don't remember when. But I was a child. Wasn't even a preteen. I picked up my first drinking drug. And it became my best friend. It comforted whatever was going on inside. I was screaming on the inside for something. I don't know what it was, but I was screaming on the inside for something. And that drug and alcohol gave me ease and comfort and made me feel like I was on top of the world. And from that time on, I continued to use and drink. And I wasn't one of those one-hit wonders. When I took that hit or I took that drink, it was on. And that was it. That was much as I could drink, I drank to forget my name. I didn't drink to get tipsy, I drank to not remember nothing. I took my first hit off a crack pipe at the age of 13, 14 years old, and if anybody in here knows anything about crack cocaine and what it can do to you and what it can make you do, as a little girl, I had lost choice. You know, I hear girls talk about it, and I too have experienced selling my body for drugs and things like that. But when I look back at my story, and I see myself as a little 11, 12-year-old little girl that took her first hit off the crack pipe and started doing demoralizing and incomprehensible things to get her next hit, I see a little girl that had lost a choice not only to drink and use, but lost a choice to do what things were happening to her at that age. And it was just an ongoing thing all my life. And in that, I became, I could go on and on and on, but we all know what drugs do to us. I've tried every drug. I've not just tried every drug, I've been addicted to every drug there is. Crack cocaine, methamphetamines, heroin, pot, alcohol. More. And the last go around was when my last go around before I came face to face with my Creator was I was using drugs intravenously, and that was a bad deal in my life. But anyway, through my drug addiction and not even knowing who I was, and I started out a scared little girl and became still a scared little girl, but cocky in a lot of ways because I had to put up a fight. I had to survive, so I learned survival defense mechanisms to do that. So in essence, I did everything I could to take care of myself and get what I wanted and how I wanted it. So I used people, I abused people, my family got the brunt end of it, and I became a walking, talking monster, so to speak, and I had hatred so big on the inside of me that I could not stand any living human being in the face of me, no matter who you were, what you said, because I hated myself and was disgusted with myself so much. So I was just existing, and in my existing, I was existing, but I was wanting to die, and I didn't have excuse me, Father, but you know my heart, I didn't have the balls to kill myself. So I just continued to, take as many drugs and alcohol as I could to do that. So I went into my first treatment center at the age of 18 years old, and from there, I'm not going to go into all the treatment centers I went into. I've been into about, I try to sit down and I try to write and count how many treatments I've been into, and on top of my head, I've been into over 20, 30-day treatment centers, in and out. In and out, just to go back to what I always knew, because there was no heart change. In fact, the last time I went to this treatment, Preferred Family Health Center, Jason, if you guys are here, Jason was my counselor. He's on point. He's good, and he knows his stuff. And when I pulled up to that treatment center and he was outside, he was asking me how I was doing and blah, blah, blah. We were talking, and I walked up, coming down from my high, walking up like I do, like I know everything, just like that with my cigarette out of my hand. And I said, here we go again. And he said, yeah. He said, what's going to be different this time? And I said, well, I could have a PhD in this stuff. I've done this so many times. I know what I'm doing here. And he said, well, you could have a PhD in the knowledge of it. He said, but can you live it? And that was a good question. It was, I could not live it. I'm still learning to live it today. Recovery is not easy. But that was my last treatment, this last time at Preferred, and I found the Healing House in New Beginnings. I didn't find it. It was a gift from God. In fact, I didn't find it at all. It kind of just happened circumstantially. It kind of happened, it was an intervention from God Almighty through my father-in-law, Richard Benton, through prayer, and it all came together, and it all was a full circle, and I knew that it was exactly where God had took me. But before that treatment in Preferred, I was in the car with my mom, bawling, and I knew that I did not want to go to a long-term treatment. I did not want to commit. But I knew, too, also, that if I did not do something besides a 30-day treatment center, that I was not going to change, and I was going to die or possibly never see my kids again. knew nothing about a long-term treatment, but I knew that if I got there, that they had resources and maybe we could find something. So I got there, and lo and behold, my mother and my father-in-law, which they're my ex-mother and father-in-law, but I call them my mother and father-in-law because they're still a huge part of my life, and they're my children's grandparents. But anyway, they were there, coincidentally, teaching Bible study when I went to treatment. And it was pretty wild. And I walked in and to the Bible study, not expecting, and there they were, and I'm like, whoa. And so in that Bible study, Richard Bennett, he pointed at me directly in front of everybody who was there, and he said, "Excuse me, but this is my family. I have to say this. I don't know if you remember that or not." But he said, "I know a place for you, and I've already visioned it in my head, and if you do this, I know how it's going to turn out. I already saw it." And something inside of me trusted that, you know. I can't say that I really wanted to do it at that point, but I did trust that he knew. I trust the man. So anyway, long story short, we called about it. I found out about it, and I ended up going to meet Heather at the healing house. And I walked in, and she was apprehensive of me, and I sure was apprehensive of her. And I didn't know if this was going to work for me. I was very on the fence. I was very not sure about it. I walked in there with no pretense. I walked in there with no, I did walk in there with preconceived notions. I walked in there thinking that I was going to see some lady with a long dress on and sitting in a chair reading the Bible with her hair in a bun. And that it was going to be like a place where you got to wear skirts, you can't talk to guys, you can't smoke cigarettes, you got to get off your psych meds. That's what I thought. That's what I was thinking, kind of. Not to that extent, but a little bit. But I walked in there and I met her, and right away I knew, without her even saying a word, I knew, it witnessed to my spirit that she had been to this place that I've been. And to Richard sharing with me, you know, that when he heard her speak, he saw me in his mind. So I thought about it, you know, but I still wasn't sure about it. And I met with Heather in her office, and I walked around there because as addicts and alcoholics, or I can speak for myself directly, I want what I want when I want it, how I want it. And when I walked in there, things went the way I wanted them. I walked around and saw the bedrooms and saw that I was going to be squashed next to another girl, and that I was going to have to live a certain way, and that there was these guidelines and that there were these rules I wasn't too sure about, and I wasn't going to live the way that I wanted to live, and I wasn't sure about it. And I told her that. I said, "I'm not sure about this." And because of the heart that she has, she said, "Well, you know what? I'm going to," she looked at her calendar, she said, "I'm going to give you till this date," and I think it was a couple weeks or something like that. She said, "I'm going to give you time to pray on it," and she prayed with me. I remember that, and I said, "Okay." And I remember I cried a little bit, and I went back to that treatment center, and I began to pray. And seek God and His direction on it before I even really knew who God was. But I was still, while I was seeking that, I was still looking for other places to go because I want what I want when I want it and how I want it. So I was looking for other places to go because I wasn't ready for this, gotta do things a different way. I wasn't ready for that. But I knew that that's what I needed. So,
Yes.
Long story short, I decided to go, and I went, but the first time I went, yes, I've been in the healing house twice. The first time I went, I'm standing, walking, talking, miracle from it, so the first time I went there, I was halfway in, and this program tells us, half measures avail us nothing, and that's exactly what happened. The first time I went, I was ready to change, but I wasn't ready to change. I was scared to change, but I was scared not to change. And because I lived the life that I've always known since I've been a little girl, and I was 38 years old walking in there, that was more familiar to me. That was where I was, I did not want to let go of it because it was more familiar to me, so I didn't let go of it in a lot of ways. I had walked in there with a chip on my shoulder. I was very rough around the edges, which I still am in a lot of ways. God smoothed me out because if it wasn't for Him, I would not be where I am. But I walked in there, and I wasn't an easy person to be around at all. More so than now. Girls, okay, I know I'm still not sometimes. But way more than I was not. It was not easy. I bucked the whole program. I mouthed Heather a lot. I just worked against it in all ways. I worked against it a lot. I did get to my Bible here and there, and I tried. But you know, there's a saying, and I say it to the girls now, and I say it a lot to people: don't try, do. And I was trying, I wasn't doing. So it didn't get really that far. I hate when I take a drink of water because I forget what I'm saying, and I have to remember.
We got you.
Okay, good. Anyway, so in that, and also I want to get honest about something as well. I was on a prescription drug when I was in treatment before I went to Heather's first. When I went to Heather's first time, I was on a prescription drug. It wasn't a narcotic, but they might as well make it a narcotic. FDA sometimes confuses me, but they should have made it a narcotic because it's how it made me feel. And what happened was that I went to Heather's, and because I was fearful of this place and living this life, I continue to do what I do outside there, fearful of everything in my life, so I'm going to self-medicate to deal with it. So I would cheat this medication just like we do in jail and prisons and treatments. I would cheat this medication that Heather would give me, and I would she would give it to me, and I would just take a whole bunch of them and put them to the side, and then they would come by, and I'd take like 10 of them at a time. And then I think I had everybody full, just like I thought I did when I was on methamphetamines too, but I didn't have anybody fooled. The girls were starting to see behavior changes. Heather was noticing it, and I wasn't quite right. She came and asked me if she gave me a drug test, would I pass it, and I said, the flying colors, I'll pass it. Because it's not a narcotic, you know. I was all right, you know what I mean? So there was really nothing that was done with that. But in that means I was not no recovery. No recovery whatsoever. I was still the same person doing the same thing, nothing changing, just going through some motions, you know, acting like I was doing something different. And in that, I still hung on to my past relationships, my music and all that, and I don't want to get into all that because I got my feelings about that anyway, but there was a time, it was Christmas time that came, and I asked Heather if I could go see my family and hang out with them, and she allowed me to do that because I had been there long enough. And she says that she knows that what was going to happen, which I believe that she does. I think that I too knew that what was going to happen, but I wanted to believe that it wasn't. I had enough, we all say we don't have intentions on, you know. Heather says it best. I repeat in class all the time. I told you I repeat you. I repeat in class all the time. Intentions are a road paved to hell, is what you say. And it's true because I can have good intentions all day long, but unless I do it, those intentions mean nothing.
Yes.
But I went to my nephews and my mom's, and I smoked a blunt with my nephew. And every part of me wanted to do that. And I wasn't thinking it through of what I was going to do afterwards. I just knew that I was not going to be able to go back to Heather's. And I smoked a joint. And if you're like me, an addict like me, and joint's not enough, okay, let's go get some liquor. So we got the liquor. You know, and I think it was about that time, I'd been there for a few hours, and I decided to give Heather a call. Because I had the nerve to do it, because I was a little tipsy at that time. So I called Heather, and we talked on the phone for a while. She knew that I had used, and of course I never stopped using, but she knew that I was in the state that I was in, and I remember her telling me on the phone that night, I know you're going to be back here. I don't know when, but I know that you will. I didn't believe that. I didn't, but she said that I would be. But in that, I went out and, you know, one thing leads to another. I smoked pot, I drank, then I did this, and ended up a week later with a needle sticking out of my arm, walking around barefooted, 3 o'clock in the morning, flipping everybody off in the whole wide world, getting arrested, and God knows what else. But so and in that time period, I ended up overdosing, and they took me out of my nephew's house on a stretcher and life flighted my body to university because I wasn't breathing, and I ended up being in a coma for 5 days. And my mom said that when she saw the urine in my closet, the bag that they had, it was black. She couldn't even see through it, and they didn't know if I was going to awake because they put me in ICU. But I awoke. I mean, I don't know who awakes after 400 pills in them and all the drugs that I had in them and all those things. I don't know. But today I know. But at that moment, for a long time, I didn't like, whoa. But I woke up, but guess what this addict did? She went out and used again after she almost lost her own life. That's what we do. But sooner or later, I ended up going back to Preferred, and in that, my son begged me to go back to Heather's. My mom begged me to go back to Heather's. There was a part of me that knew that I needed to go back to Heather's, but there was a big part of me that said, I'm not going back to Heather's. And so I was looking for every way possible not to go back to Heather's. I was looking at all the Oxford houses. I was looking at all the easy ways out, all the ways I could to do things that I wanted to do. Maybe have a little bit of rules, but still live life in a way that did not have these guidelines and that I would have to change drastically. And when I went back to treatment, and I was tired. You know, we're all tired after all of our ventures out there, but this time I was so ready, and that's the key. I was ready. I was ready to the point of falling on my knees and crying out to God. And I remember the crocodile tears falling to the floor on that treatment center, and just crying and sobbing and pleading with God, and pleading, and then you know, I don't remember the words per se, but just pleading and asking Him to do something, because I couldn't do it no more. And it was in that, not that moment necessarily, I had went to bed. When I woke up from that long prayer and that desperation, the gift of desperation, when I woke up from that, there was a shift in my perception out of nowhere. Just bam, a shift. Out of all these years, this shift came. And I don't know about any of you guys, but when I got off drugs and alcohol in my life, and many times that I have, I still felt worthless, hopeless, unlovable. I was never going to amount to anything. I was never going to be good enough. I was never going to be able to do this. I was never going to be capable of this change. My kids were never going to look at me and be proud of me. All these things would all drive me back out there, and it would be a vicious cycle of going and doing it over again and again. But this shift that I got of perception in that treatment center came over me like a flood after that prayer. And even though I might have felt worthless and lovable like I did all the times before, and even though I had a mess out there waiting for me to face, there was something. We all know what that's. I know what that something is. I don't know what y'all. I know what that something was today. Absolutely know what that something was. That perception, that shift. There was something that just flooded over me, where I was able to stand tall, not proud, but stand tall and look myself in the eye and know that I was loved by a Creator, and that He loved me right where I was. And that I did not have to clean up. I did not have to be changed in that instant. I didn't have to do all the things to face the destruction. I didn't have to do any of that for Him to love me right where I was. And I felt that. I felt like that like never before. It was almost like a father loving their little girl and picking them up and protecting them, and a father that I've never had. That's what I felt. So, in that moment, I started feeling that way. I made a decision. So that was step one. Step one, I knew my life was unmanageable, and that I was powerless. And I got to that gift of desperation, and I will always call it a gift, because desperation is a gift. And so step two, I came to believe. I got on my knees and I came to believe that a power greater than me can restore me. Somehow, some way. Did I believe it totally? No, I didn't believe it totally, but I believed it enough to surrender and get on my knees and call out. That's what I did. Step three, I woke up from that treatment center that morning, and I made a decision. I made a decision to do whatever it takes. I made a decision to get into my word, no matter if I felt like it, no matter if I understood what I was reading, no matter if I went out into the group room where I was and I was the only one in my Bible and everybody else around me was talking about this person, talking about that person, there was drama. I was in my word. I made a decision that day forward that I was going to do whatever it takes to change my life. No matter I wanted to or not, I was going to do what it takes. And in that, I had to go back to Heather's. I mean, I had to. It was a no-brainer. It was a no-brainer. When I made that decision, and I was seeking God after that, and I asked God, what do you want me to do? And I've said this before. It was like I had God looking down and just shaking His head. Baby girl, go back to Heather's. And I knew that I had to go back to Heather's. And when I went back to Heather's, I was willing to do there too, whatever it took. I was ready to be broke like a horse, so to speak.
I mean, whatever she asked me to do, I was willing to do. If she told me to go roll out in the grass 5 times, I probably would have done it, whether I understood it or not, because I was on a desperation to change my life. And I knew that if I didn't do something different, and that for an addict like me, and for many of us, if we don't change, not to change is to die. So I had to change. I already had the heart change. He put a spirit in me in that treatment center. And from then on, it was my duty and my job, and it was my decision that I had to make every day, daily, to do something different. And even when I got to Heather's out of that treatment center, I did the same thing at Heather's that I still do today. I did the same, and I want to tell you that too. Consistency is the key to this thing. Discipline is the key to this thing. Because I'm going to tell you, when I first got to Heather's, I made a decision there daily to focus on exactly what I was focused on to change, not anything around me, none of my circumstances, none of the happenings. In fact, I was on stipulation when I went back to Heather's, and she said, you are not to reach out to your children, you are not to hang out with